Jessica, thanks so much for joining me today.
No problem.
We are going to have a practice interview where I interview you about some of your thoughts about the 4.0 prototype ideas. And I have on screen the form that folks use to take notes so we can show them how to use it kind of as we go. So for folks watching at home, the first thing on the form is you have to select who you're talking to. And I am talking to Jessica, who is a family member. So I've selected family. I'm hitting next on the form. And this gives me some background about why we're talking to families. So I'll just say this to you as a family member. Families are a really crucial group for us to engage with in this study phase, which is why I'm talking to you. We really want to hear from you, your thoughts about this. It's okay if you have questions and want to clarify as we go. And whatever feedback you have, we're going to just take and consider. So we're going to have this conversation about a couple of components. I think you and I talked about starting with 2B, which is percent of students participating in vibrant learning experiences. So I'm going to select that here on the form and hit next, which takes me to the questions I'm going to ask you. All right. So first, I'm just going to explain what we mean by students participating in vibrant learning experiences. So normally in an interview, you wouldn't be able to see this on there. I have these notes for myself, but since we're practicing, everybody can see this. But I'm going to read along because that's what I would be doing in a normal interview. So I'm going to try and describe to you this idea. We've been using the term vibrant learning experiences in the Cool Council, or VLE, as a label for powerful learning. Specifically, the United We Learn Council has defined vibrant learning in this way. Learning that matters to students. In partnership with families and communities, students are agents of their own learning, engaged in relevant, authentic, joyful learning experiences. Vibrant learning honors students' cultural wealth, gifts, and interests. Vibrant learning culminates in the application of knowledge, skills, and all demonstrated through personalized products. And we already know, because we've learned about this at the Cool Council, that in Kentucky, there's a lot of this going on in various schools and communities around the Commonwealth. Things like student capstone projects or student-led conferences, service-based learning experiences, work-based learning experiences, student defenses of learning, or personalized learning pathways. Maybe that's career-connected learning or independent study or dual enrollment in college courses. So the idea here, in terms of what we would do with this at the state, is that schools would keep track of each time a student participates in one of these kinds of experiences in a vibrant learning experience. And they would report to the state what percent of students have access to and participate in a vibrant learning experience each year. So that's what this is about. So first, do you have any questions about how this might work, how it might work for us to gather this information?
Um, Sort of if you would you be looking at like percentages of at-risk kids, percentages of special education kiddos?
Mhm.
Like how would you break it down demographically?
That's a good question. So I would just say that you are offering us some feedback here, which is you'd be most interested in this measure if we also did disaggregate it into some subgroups that we're interested in to make sure that percent of students is capturing all kids. Is that fair characterization of your feedback?
Yeah.
I'm just gonna put a note here. Interested in subgroup reporting. That's my little note. Is there anything about adding this to school accountability that you think would be helpful from your perspective as a family member?
I think it would be because I think it would be helpful to know if the school is actively trying to set up these vibrant learning experiences.
Mhm. Great. Just take a moment to correct a typo here. Sorry. Thank you. Is there anything about adding this to school accountability that you think might have some unintended consequences?
I don't, I'm trying to think. I don't think so. I think the only one would be running into a lot of questions if we didn't kind of have school, if they kept it very superficial with like, oh, 80% of our kids participated in this. I
Hmm.
think people would say, which kids?
Hmm.
Was this experience, that it had to be more specific. Was this
Yeah.
experience school led? Was it community led? So kind of being specific. If they're not specific enough, it might cause an issue.
And I think I hear you saying that would maybe lead to like questions from the community
Yeah,
rather than like informing them.
right.
So some specificity, some detail is important, you think?
Yeah.
So when you think especially about some of the groups that you've talked about, families whose students face challenges with school, maybe they have learning disabilities, or maybe they are dealing with poverty or other external stress factors. Is there anything about this idea that you think could be especially good or bad for them?
I think schools would really have to add extra supports for these kids. So I think telling kids, okay, you're going to go off and find these experiences for yourself might be very difficult.
Mm-hmm.
So schools are really going to have to sort of create those experiences or at least work with the students and say, okay, so if you let's look at your life and see if you've already done some of this
Yeah.
already. So they're going to have to be really proactive about it.
Mm-hmm. Great. And again, thanks for waiting for me while I type.
I should probably go slower.
No, you're just fine. You're totally fine. Is there any other feedback you'd like to provide on this idea of reporting in some way the percent of students who are engaging in these experiences?
No, I think at least from my perspective, I think what I most worry about is kind of already in there. I've already said about
Yeah.
making sure to reach everyone.
Yep. I'm going to use the words, this really shows that we are reaching everyone. There's a way to collect that data that you've talked about. It's important. Okay, well, now we're going to choose another area to go into. And I think you had said you were interested in assessment system ideas. So why don't we hop there? So same process as last time, which is first I'm going to share with you what these ideas are. Excuse me. And then I have a really similar set of questions to ask you about them. So there are really two ideas being considered in terms of assessment system ideas. Um, One, that the current social studies and writing tests are replaced by locally created and evaluated performance assessments. So that just means at a district level, they would create performance assessments, which are a little bit more authentic and graded with like a rubric, can be evaluated by teachers to address the priorities currently addressed through the writing and social studies exams given by the state. So that's one idea. The second idea is that smaller literacy and math assessments currently given by districts to track progress throughout the school year. So some people call these formative assessments or interim assessments, these like little assessments along the way in literacy and math would be replaced by a state provided through year assessment for literacy and math. So basically, local people are doing this right now. Maybe the state would pay for one, and there'd be just one interim assessment system that's used for literacy and math. So neither of these things are talking about an end of year language arts or math assessment. That all is assumed that that's staying the same in what we're talking about here. We're just talking about changing either the social studies and writing tests to local performance assessments, or instead of locals paying for and selecting their own little interim assessments, maybe the state pays for and provides a single one of those to the state, or maybe multiples of those to the state. I don't know. But the idea that it would be state provided instead of locally paid for. So this would mean your student would no longer take state social studies or writing tests. Instead, they would complete performance assessments, excuse me, designed by your school and district to align with their class content. These assessments can be graded by their teachers, and you'll be able to see which criteria your student has met or hasn't met because it'll be done locally. So all of that can be shared with you. While your student will still take some form of smaller formative assessments throughout the year, they might differ from the previous ones, like the ones they're using right now. And the district would not incur any additional costs for doing that, which they currently pay for themselves. Your student would still continue to take the state reading and math tests in the spring, with scores reported to you in the fall. So that's the summary of what's being discussed here. First, do you have any questions about how this might work? There's kind of a lot. It's sort of two for one here. So I know it's a lot
Yeah,
to
yeah.
consider.
That is a big chunk,
Uh-huh.
really, on
Yeah, and
two
you can
totally
take
different
each one
things.
separately. Yeah.
I think for the first part, kind of looking at what support are we going to give the schools to develop these assessments? Because the schools across Kentucky really aren't created equally. They should all be doing the same, well, not the same things, but we should all be trying our best for the students, but some schools really lack that either the money or the resources or the staff, really.
Yeah.
And so kind of making sure that whatever they're coming up with is really what's best for the kiddos. That there's not a huge gap between a Lexington school and a really rural school, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't want to see a rural school being like, oh, we had this worksheet
Yeah.
for our assessment. Or, even a city school, like, oh, we have this worksheet. And then this other school saying, oh, well, we had this entire project that's
Yeah.
engineering based, kind of.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry.
Sorry. I
You're
have to
great.
slow down.
No, you're
I hear
really
my
doing
teachers
fine.
telling me that.
No, you're doing fine. I don't mind at all. I don't want you to feel like I'm being awkward or not listening because I'm typing. So I'm just taking through the type. Um, okay. So is there anything about adding this to school accountability that you think would be helpful or making these changes that you think would be helpful?
Um, I think that I definitely think the second one is going to be really helpful for schools. One, it takes some of that financial burden away,
Mm-hmm.
and um, it's also just a relief, I think, for some parents, knowing that we're doing the same assessments no matter where we're moving across the state.
Great. Anything you want to say about the other idea in here about social studies and writing coming to performance tasks locally versus the state exams? It's okay
I
if you
think it,
don't. I just want to ask.
I think it would be really great for them to kind of help meet those like the vibrant learning experiences criteria because they could use this to justify that.
Mhm.
So that way there's not so much pressure of doing totally different things.
Sounds like I'm saying this back to you to see if I'm hearing you right. I think you're kind of saying it seems like a good idea when this system kind of offers some alignment. Like it doesn't ask people to do 100 different things, but it's like we could do assessments like this, and that would help you with your vibrant learning experiences. And we have some kind of coherence or alignment in the state.
For sure.
Great. Is there anything about this idea that you think might have some unintended or negative consequences?
I I've always from day one, I know we're in the direction of giving more power back locally,
Mhm.
but where I've gone to lots of school systems in Kentucky, I just worry that it's there's going to be some experiences that are really lacking
Mhm.
compared to others. And so that for especially for the first one, that would hold true.
Yeah. So I'm just going to repeat something you said earlier, which is support would be really important for this. Like there'd have to be some really high quality support to know that this
Yeah.
isn't going to be something that leads to a giant inequity, but instead is something that gives everybody the capacity to do something new, better.
Yeah.
I just wrote support for local districts is important. Um, And similar question as last time, which is when you think about families who have students facing challenges with school, such as learning disabilities or poverty or other stress issues that make it hard, is there anything about this idea that you think would be especially good or bad for them?
I, so to go against what I said just 5 seconds ago, having that flexibility is really good for our kiddos with learning disabilities. Um, Not having to just do a test
Yeah.
because testing it can be really hard for these kids. And so that really allows them to show what they know in a way that's better for them. 'Cause, 'em. 'Cause, 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 'cause,
That puts even more importance on your note about support, right? Because it's like, wow, this could be even better if
If,
well
yeah,
supported, right?
yeah, yeah.
Great. Anything else you want to say about this idea?
Um, oh, I think just figuring out what system for the second part, like which actual assessment all schools would use. I do
Mhm.
not want to be part of that. That's gonna be fun.
Yeah. Finding agreement there might be a challenge.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Okay. Wonderful. All right. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to do this with me today. As you know, we're going to share this video with folks to help them know how to go have these conversations with others. And I hope they saw how easy it is to share these ideas and have somebody respond and give us some helpful feedback. You certainly gave us some really helpful feedback today. So thank you so much.